Canada and African relations, where would you put them at this time, especially after the credit crisis when investors are holding back?
Lerato, Canada, like South Africa, was not really affected by the credit crisis because they have kept their policies quite in check, just like us. They have had their credit act quite in check, and they have had very stringent ways of handling their banking rules and so forth. So it is on a good footing. In fact, a recent survey that was done by a leading Canadian research puts Canada as number one in terms of world ranking in terms of banking laws and so forth. South Africa trails a little bit behind. Right. So we're on a very good footing with Canada.
So the fundamentals are strong, and Canada came out fairly unscathed from the credit crisis. That means that Canada is cash rich then, one would assume, and ready to invest. Are they ready to bring their money to South Africa and indeed Africa?
We have to work harder on that market, Lorato. Number one, I need to point out that South Africa is a bit far away from Canada. Canada does business with the United States and other America's countries, like South America, Chile, Argentina, and so forth, more than it would do with Africa because of the proximity. So we still have to work a lot harder. However, it does a lot of business with South Africa in the mining industry in particular. And recently we've seen their interest in junior mining. Mm-hmm. We have seen their interest grow in exploring mining dumps, mines that have lied dormant in South Africa. That interest, I think, is growing. They've also been growing in interaction with countries in Southern Africa, using South Africa as a springboard to enter the rest of the continent. So I think on that platform, it's a good show.
With Canada obviously being a very strong mining economy in global terms, and potentially a major player in developing mining assets in Africa, raises the question of the nationalization debate in South Africa and some of the measures taken to transform the sector through the mining charter. That has led to disquiet in terms of local investments. Have the Canadians been vocal about this?
Let me say, on that issue, it's about, strange enough, the big mining companies in Canada are not too concerned, because they are aware that this is not national policy, it's not government policy. And they understand that South Africa is quite open in terms of, since the democratic dispensation, that, we talk. But that doesn't mean it's national policy. But having said that, junior mining partners do tend to get a bit jittery. Yeah. But I guess because they don't have that much money to invest, and they find themselves more at risk. But bigger companies, I have found them a bit undisturbed, because they understand that this is not...
Chris, the Consul General stressing the need to distinguish between big player investors and the junior miners. And I think that's a very important distinction to make. One, because of the financial capacity that the one has versus the other. But this is really a situation where in today's environment, and with the expenses incurred in terms of capex investments into mining, it tends to be a situation where the strong survive and the junior miners are being edged out. Is it a good strategy for the Canadians to be coming in at that level of investment?
Yes, I think so. Canada is probably at the center of the world as a crucible for venture capital when it comes to junior miners. And there's quite a few companies that are listed on the JSE, but also on Toronto, that actually has raised capital in and has used the platform that's in Canada. It's quite a deep, broad market that is there. It's one of those big missing deficiencies. It's almost where the JSE started, but is nowhere near and is not serving that purpose anymore in South Africa. And so Canada's been interested in that side, but I think you're right in the sense that that sector is a lot more sensitive. And the irony is, when we start to talk about nationalization, the ability to tap the Canadian market for finance in smaller ventures in South Africa start to get a bit more wobbly because of that. It's actually quite destructive.
Beyond, you wanted to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to also indicate that, you know, the history of mining between Canada and South Africa is quite a long history. But the distinction is that Canada has only really been mining on the surface for a long time, while South Africa has been going deepest. So only now Canada is beginning to go deep and really require South African expertise. In fact, every other mining engineer you find or you meet in Canada is South African.
Yeah. So there's that synergy as well.
There's that synergy, and Canada realizes that it needs South Africa as well, in terms of not only human resources, skilled labor, of course, as well as mining equipment. Because we've been mining deep and our technology is quite advanced, we are able to trade with Canada in that respect.
Moving beyond mining, you know, it's been said that Canada could lend investment support in areas such as manufacturing and automotives, a very distressed area of trade in South Africa. That seems to be where we're losing our competitive edge. How can Canada come in and be part of the solution?
South Africa has been ordering from Canada and Canada from South Africa a lot of parts in automotive. I think there is a big niche there, because Canada realizes that it needs to diversify from its historic linkages with, you know, the Americas in terms of trade, and it's beginning to realize that we need to go down south, we need to go to the continent to source certain services, one of them being that. The other big service growing is in the chemical industry. They are working very well with us in that regard. The one area that I thought I should also emphasize on, which is very much closely following the mining industry, is in agro-processing. Right now, as we speak, Ontario province is at 45% of our wine production, of our wine imports. Quebec is growing in leaps and bounds and really trails a little bit behind Ontario at 42%. So in that area, there is a lot of room for growth. In 1 year alone, 2009, we netted profits of about 125 million Canadian dollars as South Africa. So that's one area we need to begin to look into. We are growing again in fruit, in canned fruit, in dried and fresh fruit.
Chris, just your views on this one. I mean, South Africa, we're grappling with a strong currency. But
Canada's in the same position.
And we're also grappling with the fact that our exports have dwindled by about 20%. So as we're trying to find new markets looking east, could we be looking into Canada, which has similar challenges as you're suggesting?
They've got the same challenges. They've also got to try and manufacture, and manufacturing is a very important part of the Canadian economy. It's not just a mining economy at all. And they've been able so far to cope with the strength of the Canadian dollar, because their productivity is much stronger. And this is one of the things that we can learn, certainly from a seasonal point of view, and in terms of variety. Our agricultural sector can provide a lot, in terms of exports to Canada. But one must make sure that one's got the margins. Otherwise, it's there's better. There may well be better opportunities in markets closer home.
And Consul General, a final question to you. I mean, China has emerged as Africa's largest trading partner, and increasingly African trade is with the BRIC economies. Is Canada concerned about boosting its market share of African trade beyond South Africa?
Yeah, they are quite concerned about that. As I said in my earlier question, they are interested in and growing their interest in the rest of the continent, using South Africa as a springboard. We're beginning to see mining companies emerge from Canada and working in Namibia, in Botswana, in Angola, in terms of petroleum and so forth. They are moving deeper into the continent, and they're using South African skills in ICT, engineering and so forth. Canada realizes that it needs South Africa in order to be able to get into the rest of the continent. I think,
Thanks so much.
I think they're also aware that if they sit back and not engage Africa, you can't blame China if China comes through.
Yeah.
And because of the problems with the United States economy, they have no choice but to begin to look up to the continent for growth as well. And I'm seeing that happen. Just recently in September, the Department of Mining, together with a number of companies, we're hosting Electron Mining, which is an equipment show. And we saw for the first time 28 Canadian mining companies coming to the fair to show that they can do trade with Africa. So for me, it's a good sign.